Hey everyone, I wanted to revisit some ocho technique with you and talk about how to make sure that the ochos that you're leading are clear and comfortable for the follower. I am once again joined by Eve today, who will help me demonstrate this. And we're going to start by talking about the very traditional ocho technique that you might have learned from the very beginning in a lot of the beginner classes. A lot of the teachers will use this technique to teach the ocho, and it looks like this. If you're in open embrace, especially, you take a side step, and the leader takes a secret weight change and then leads the follower to take an ocho, and then maybe you do something after that. Maybe you repeat it a few times. You can use that to also lead, of course, front ochos. So the technique is the same. I take a side step and I have a secret weight change while I pivot my follower, and then they go forward ocho and forward ocho. Okay? Now, one thing I want you to notice is how much the follower here has to pivot in order to make this step happen. So when I am going side and I change weight, her next step, if I'm leading a back ocho, for example, she'll pivot enough so that she can take a step behind herself. So it's perpendicular to me. And then if she's going to do it again, she'll pivot to the point where the hips are pointing in the direction she's going to go, and then she steps back. So in order for Eve to actually do this successfully, she has to really dissociate and spiral through the spine. And I would say it's probably the most you can do when you're aiming to do these really deep ochos. It's the most dissociation that you can really do comfortably before things start kind of falling apart. Now, on the social dance floor, when you're dancing at the milonga, it's not very often that you'll have the opportunity to take the time and do side step, change weight, and then another side step and another side step. So even though we learn this technique when we're learning ochos, it's not very applicable on the social dance floor because it holds up the line of dance. This is why earlier in the series I was teaching ochos from walking, because that's really how you're going to apply them. And when you're doing it from walking, what you as a leader are doing is sneaking in the secret weight change while you're walking. So I'm going to do it here. And now, if you see, Eve is walking in ochos. Now, as she's walking, I want you to notice something different about these ochos compared to the ochos that she was doing. The ochos she was doing prior were landing here. You see how much she has to dissociate. But the ochos that she's doing here are landing here. So they're much more shallow, and there's very little pivot in the standing foot. It's more like a little bit more of a zigzag walk. So there's not a lot of pivoting going on. Okay? This difference of walking in the line of dance versus doing ocho side to side is going to have a big impact on how the follower is going to execute the move. The biggest mistake I see leaders make is when they combine the technique of side-to-side ochos with walking in the line of dance. So it's going to look like this. As you put your follower into cross system to walk in ochos, you take wide steps to the side as you're traveling in the line of dance. So you end up moving side to side, and your follower has to pivot a lot. Now, in open embrace, it's still manageable. But if I do that in close embrace, and this is where a lot of the problems begin to happen, because Eve is very much attached to me. So if I'm going side to side and she's in close embrace, it requires her to twist a lot more than she is comfortable with being so close to me. So the follower ends up working really hard to stay with you because if I'm attached at this point here and I really want to be connected, it's very hard for me to twist my hips enough to actually take a proper back step. So what ends up happening is I, as a follower, either I'm going to disconnect so that I can make that step, or I'm going to change something in my mechanics. Maybe I'll land like this in order to catch it because I have to find the range somewhere. So to correct this, you just want to understand and sort of have an image in your mind of what is it actually that's creating the ocho? Like, why is the follower going into this step? If you see, and I'm going to do this in more of a practice embrace, if I change my weight here and start walking, continue walking in this direction, but she is on her right foot here. So her only option is to go behind herself this way. Now the next step, if I just think about my own axis going to my right, she's going to follow that and do the other step. So it doesn't really have anything to do with my arms. It has more to do with where my axis is. So my axis is traveling from side to side, whether I'm walking in parallel system or cross system. When we're walking, our axis slightly shifts side to side. The more I shift my axis to the side in cross system, the more the follower has to pivot. And the more they have to pivot, the more you have to open the embrace to allow them to have more of a range of motion. So you want to solidify that understanding just so that you can make sure that you're providing the follower with the support they need when they're executing the ochos. If you are in close embrace, especially, and you go into ochos, make them walking ochos. And here, just allow your feet to land on either side of the follower's feet. And notice that I'm not doing anything with my upper body. I'm not twisting. I'm just tracking where her leg is going to go. And then I feel where her next step wants to go. So I'm just kind of allowing myself to feel where she's going to land on each step. And then if I decide that I want her to make more pronounced ochos, I want to overturn them a little bit more, then I can separate and open up the embrace and allow things to be a little bit bigger. For example, if I wanted to do something like this, in open embrace, it works a little bit better. So when you're walking in the line of dance and you start doing walking ochos, for you as a leader, all you got to do is allow your axis to go slightly from side to side. So your steps are a little bit in a V, kind of like one side of the V going this way and one side of the V this way. When the steps are more deep and you're going side to side, one common mistake I also see is that dancers end up overemphasizing the pivot and manipulating the follower with their arms. So here, I'm thinking about turning my follower. I'm actively turning my follower. This is not necessary as the base of the technique because once again, the reason why she's going to cross system is just because my axis is going there, not because I'm twisting her. So notice how I can just lead her to go into ochos, and here I'm just slightly turned towards her just as a response to her turning. I don't think about myself turning. I think about responding to her turning. And that's just a way that you can synchronize with the follower and that way adapt to different followers' range of motion. So you're not forcing the ochos, but you can sort of feel what is their natural range of motion and not have to push through that. Okay? So try this out on your own. Play with the two different kinds of ochos. Let me know if you have any questions. And I hope I see you next Saturday at 10 a.m. If this is your first time joining my channel, I hope you choose to subscribe, and maybe we'll see you next week. Ciao.